Hello, welcome to 1874. It's time for a full-time show. The day after Boxing Day, it was Newcastle 3, Aston Villa 0. It was a rubbish Boxing Day. I'm still very upset about it. I am your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics' Jacob Tanswell, who's actually only just got back from Newcastle to talk through what was just a miserable Boxing Day game for Villa. I feel sorry for the fans that made that pilgrimage on Boxing Day. This show is sponsored by Luke Roper, and if you want to get 20% off everything Luke have to offer, I'm sure there'll be some sales going on. Then use the code TVV20 and you'll get 20% off. Jacob, I say happy Christmas, but Christmas feels a long time ago now. After yesterday, I spoke to you on WhatsApp after the game, and it's infuriating, isn't it? Because I'm not saying Villa played well, or they would have gone on to win that game anyway. But obviously, the sending off has had a huge bearing on how the day has gone for Villa. But just miserable, isn't it? And then it affects the next day. I'm still in a bit of a bad mood about it. I'm starting to feel ill. Just talk through your last 24 hours as a journalist.
Yeah, hi Dan, and first of all, Merry Christmas to everyone watching. I actually played paddle against someone that is a big fan of this podcast. So,
I want to play paddle. That's something I'd really like to get into.
We can play paddle together. But yeah, the
Okay.
last 24 hours have been very busy, really. And it's just the game was just so disappointing because, like everyone else, we all made the trip up, on Boxing Day. We know the record at St James's. We know Villa's record on Boxing Day, and everyone probably thought Villa might lose given the circumstances, but it just felt very flat. And considering the effort it took to get there on the day like that and the long travelling, I'm in Somerset now. It took about 6 hours to get back, but after that you just feel a bit deflated because it's not the case of Villa just losing, but they didn't really have a chance to get going. Like they conceded after 85 odd seconds or whatever it was, and then they had obviously the red card as well. So it just feels like everyone went there, and they got there. It took ages to get there, and then they got there, and literally Villa didn't have a chance. They weren't never really in the game, so it's really quite disappointing. And obviously, from my point of view and yours as well, in our interpretation, there's a real big, strong sense of injustice, isn't there, which really makes things worse.
Yeah, look, I like to think I'm relatively level-headed, but I've got to say the last two aways have annoyed me probably more than defeats normally do. There were three factors for me going into this game that I don't know why I'm disappointed because I should have known. One, had lost four away games in a row. I think leading into this game, away form's not been brilliant. Two, it's Newcastle. Thomas Hitzlsperger's doing punditry for Amazon yesterday. He hasn't played for Villa for about 20 years. He was in the team the last time Villa won at St James's Park. So that tells you everything you need to know. And third, Boxing Day records, not particularly brilliant, as you just said as well. So I should have known what was going to happen. I shouldn't have got excited about the football. That's my mistake. That's my bad. It's just the way it unfolded, though. I mean, I was across, as I said last night. We were back and forth on WhatsApp. The goal that we conceded in the opening minute and a half of the game. I don't often get on the players' backs, and I don't often have a pop at the team really because they're a brilliant team. They've brought me so much joy over the last few years. But to start a game like that, I'd use two words. One, I think it's pathetic. Two, it's unprofessional. I honestly feel that strongly about it, that you go into a place where you've got an abhorrent record. You've been pumped last year. You never win there. The crowd's obviously going to be up for it because it's Newcastle and they've got a good fan base at St James's Park. Don't give them something to get behind in the first minute of the game. And that's exactly what we did. And it's just such a naive goal. It's a good finish, but close him down. You've let him cut onto his right foot, giving him all the time in the world to pick out the corner. And he's done it because he's a good player.
Yeah, Emery actually used two words as well. He said very bad. And I wrote about this. I wrote about this in the piece that went up this morning, and I think I had a comment that said, it's a wrong tone of the article. The issue was the red card, and of course, as we'll come on to, the red card had a huge part to play, but that shouldn't detract from the first 90 seconds, which, as Emery says, were very bad and, like you say, pathetic because, as you say, Newcastle, the atmosphere actually wasn't as loud as I've heard it before. Being 3 or 4 times, it was quite flat, really. And obviously, it can be Boxing Day because people were tired and things like that. And I just thought Villa, they were in a shape where, similar to last week against Man City, and I thought they would work their way into the game. They had a midfield that was really quite physical and strong, and I thought they'd be far more equipped for Newcastle. And at points in that first half, they were. But that first passage, really, of Kamara tries a flick. Of course, it doesn't go right. Obviously, Tonali steals in, and that's absolutely fine. But as soon as he loses the ball, all of a sudden, the biggest worry is Joe Linton was just running at the back four after 80 odd seconds. You think, where's the midfield cover? Where's McGinn or Onana? What's caused a disconnect other than Kamara just giving the ball away? One little mistake shouldn't cause that. And then obviously he passes it out to Gordon, who is right-footed, wants to cut inside. And not only do the defenders, in nearby, literally allow him, like a training drill where you can just cut inside, in off the cone and shoot. They're about 2 or 3 yards away, aren't they? They're so passive, and that happened a few times in the first half. I couldn't believe how much space Gordon was getting, and obviously the finish is fantastic. But really, it's like a YouTube drill. If these quality players are given that much time in that perfect position for a right-footed left winger, then they're going to score probably. And Villa immediately on the back foot. So James was a bit louder, and all of a sudden Newcastle can do what they're great at, which is the ugly sides of the game, and Villa got frustrated very quickly.
You haven't got the initiative at that point because the game's so early. No team can possibly have the initiative. You just let them have it immediately. 1-0 straight. You haven't even done anything. The game barely kicked off. There's probably still away fans walking into their seats, going up those a million steps at St James's Park, and it's just such a basic bad start. I can't get my head around what's happened. People in the chat are having a little bit of a go at Cash. I'm not sure it's Cash's fault. Because there is a fullback overlapping as well, so he gets caught in between.
Yeah.
From seeing the goal back today, I think maybe Tielemans should be. I don't know what he's doing there because he's playing number 10, but I think maybe he should get a little bit closer. Maybe Konsa should take the initiative and close down. I think Cash has kind of got 2 men, but as someone who's more analytical than me, where do you think the blame lies for that goal?
I think it depends on the right back's decision. I think it's always very difficult when you have an overlap and you think, do I go with the guy who's about to shoot, or do I go with the overlap? And I think the immediate danger was Gordon shooting. I think if the overlap of Lewis Hall, let him have it, because I think Villa could defend the cross really, especially early on. They had it's only Isak in the box, and they would have constant power to try and defend it. You probably have to stop the biggest threat, and that is Gordon. So Cash has to get tighter. I think everyone should, I think even he will admit that he's partly at fault for that. But my biggest issue is the fact that Joe Linton had that much space to drive into initially, and you think, where was the midfield cover? Where was Onana? Where was McGinn, who was on that right side to really, to tuck in, to really be tight? And then the defence, they're quite passive as well because they drop off. Maybe Konsa could engage a bit earlier. Everything was quite just very passive, and it's a training, like I keep saying, it's a training ground routine. Joe Linton plays out to Gordon, cuts inside, shoots. They'll do that 100 times in training, and Villa were just passive and they didn't stop it. But I do think for Cash, he will have to get tighter. And it was ironic because the moment he did get tighter, he got booked like he did last week. But yeah, you can blame Cash, but I think he's only one of a couple at fault.
I mean, I'd argue it's more difficult on the training ground up against the mannequins. The mannequins have probably closed down more than the Villa players did yesterday. I'm laughing about it now, but I can't explain to you how annoying I find that in the first minute of the game. If like someone just pulls, I know it is a really good finish, but someone just pulls out an absolute worldie from nowhere straight off the battle, plays an excellent through ball, or something really good happens, okay, you can accept it. But it's the manner of that goal, the first attack of the game, so early. And from then on already, and we know what goes on to happen, but from then on, it is just a mountain to climb, an uphill battle straight away. And we're the makers of that for me. That's our fault, and it's disappointing. And Chad Lavelle said here, I like Chad Lavelle. He always I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but it always speaks a lot of sense in the chat. I will come back to this because we'll try and do the game in chronological order like we always do, and we never manage. So I feel like we've not had that comeback fightiness that we've had last season, especially from away from home. Yeah. Not sure why. I'd agree with that. I think that's a really good comment. So I've started, Chad, and I'm going to hopefully come back to it a little bit later on in the show. Look, we come on to the big talking point now of the first half because we may as well do it. Villa did kind of get control of the game, grew into the game, probably became the
Yeah.
slightly better team that had a bit more control looked a little bit more likely, kind of got to grips with it, what Newcastle were doing, because they are a very intense side. They do close down a lot.
Yeah.
They're very good at pressing, and they like to play with their tempo. But I felt Villa kind of got hold of the game probably from about 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes in then, and started to
Yeah.
play their stuff and looked like we might make something happen. The game has completely turned on the red card decision. Anthony Taylor, I can't get my head round why he's not really given himself any thinking time. Why he's objectively, and I did get objectively and subjectively wrong on social media yesterday, for those that would have seen my tweet. I don't see how he can objectively say from that distance as well that John Duran has done that on purpose, and I'm that certain of it that I'm going to brandish the red card. Once he gives the red card, VAR, forget about it. They're not going to do anything about it. They might as well sit there eating their leftover Christmas scraps that I'm sure they've got with them in Stockley Park. They're just not going to get involved. You can tell by John Duran's reaction that he's in shock. I just cannot believe that chain of events. But the leading event there is that Anthony Taylor has messed up, in my opinion. He's refereed and handled that really, really badly. And he's given it no chance to kind of be looked at or get turned over because of his action of brandishing the red card without engaging his brain first, Jacob.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And like you said, I thought Villa were actually building into the game. They weren't creating many chances. Luca Dean had that free kick, and then Cash had the rebound. But they were getting control of the game. Newcastle were just kind of having a little breather. They weren't really pressing as much, and the crowd was quiet. And I thought Villa's midfield started to really grow into it, especially Onana Kamara started keeping the ball in higher areas. And then finally, Duran gets that 1v1 against Cher. The thing that, Martinez tried to look for a few times, and Duran was offside because, Newcastle were locking up man for man, and that 1v1, and he thought, okay, in the channels, Fabian Cher, good defender, makes a really good slide tackle. Duran's running at a high speed. He's off balance. He's trying to get his balance, and he literally steps. And that's difficult. If it was intentional, I think he would have put that stud a little bit more onto his back. He knows he's putting it on there, and he kind of does his best to don't put his full weight on to hurt Cher. So I don't think it's intentional at all. And like Newcastle do, and they're fantastic here. They surround the referee, Jason Tindall, who's the assistant coaches aren't supposed to be allowed to stand up, but yeah, Tindall seems to be the exception to the rule in this case. And
he's never in the seat, Tindall
and Anthony Taylor brandishes. What I don't understand is, I can understand if the line, the assistant referee was nearby, but he was on the opposite side. Fourth official didn't have the best view here. It must have been him. And Anthony Taylor, I just think before that as well, he was showing signs of inflaming the tensions. He made 11 fouls. He gave 11 fouls in 28 minutes. Did it feel like that type of game? He kept stopping, starting game, very pernickety. And then he gives that, and I just think, like Emery says, and it's a really good point, I think, just let it go to VAR, because you can't see from where you were if that's intentional at all. And, I think you agree as well, Dan. I really don't know what Duran's supposed to do with that. I know I got a lot of pushback on that on social media from other fans, but I really don't see what he's supposed to do there. I don't think it's intentional. He's simply off balance, and he's trying to keep himself up, and the foot, I actually think, give credit to Duran, because he doesn't actually really clamp down on Cher. He does his best to avoid it. And it's just a coming together. Newcastle make a big deal with it. Anthony Taylor wants to be the main character. He gives it, and that kills the game. Duran's frustrated. Emery said afterwards that he thinks his reputation's gone before him. Mm-hmm. And I did think that at the time, but I didn't really want to say it. I think that's quite a valid point. But for that type of thing, challenge, or not even a challenge, that unfortunate incident to be banned for 3 games and make such a big impact in that current game, I think was deeply unfair. And I don't think Villa would have won that game. No. But it became a non-contest, and Villa were kind of dead from that point on.
Yeah, it's killed the game. It's killed any form of Christmas spirit that I had left. I would say you're right about the main character, Anthony Taylor. Couldn't wait to brandish the red card. I mean, you'll have a job being the main character at St James's Park when Jason Tindall's there, of course, but he absolutely wanted to take the main character role away from Jason Tindall, Anthony Taylor, and obviously I was watching at home, and I don't know whether you think this is relevant, but John Duran obviously wanted to take a free kick earlier on in the game. and I'm not saying that the commentators influenced the decision, because obviously that would be stupid, and they didn't. But even Guy Mowbray on the comms and Michael Brown, oh, you could see his frustration after he wasn't allowed to take that free kick. That's led to him doing this. It's a utter tosh. The two things aren't related at all. But I do think Emery's right. I do think John Duran's reputation has kind of gone before him. He can be hot-headed. And look, I'm the first person to criticise Duran when I think he's said or done something stupid, or come on and not done the basic things that Emery wants him to do. But I've got a massive amount of sympathy for him yesterday, because I genuinely don't think he set out to do anything wrong. And he's been punished, like you say, with the maximum punishment. And I've just got no faith that that's going to get overturned. Match of the Day kind of said the same thing as us. But the way the PGMOL are, they all just want to back the referee, or want to back their mate. And I don't think it'll get overturned. If anything, we'll probably get a further punishment because he booted the water bottles.
Yeah, and I think as journalists and media, I think, I was thinking this actually on the drive. I think we've got more of a responsibility to not label these players that are a little bit interesting characters,
young as well.
So much. But we always, I'm guilty of it as well. We always talk about John Duran being a maverick and an entertainer, and he is at certain points in games. But that shouldn't go against him. He's just because it's Duran. You don't think, he's blown a fuse again, he meant to do it, and it's red card. Because if that was a Matty Cash, for example, I don't know if it would be a red card.
I mean, Kevin James says here, comms was awful. Thought they were Anton Deck, Jimmy Nail, Geordie Dancer. Can't even think of anyone else that supports Newcastle. But I felt the comms yesterday was massively biased, and I'm going to be texting Thomas Hitzelsberger as well and speaking to him about him not backing Duran for the red card, because that disappointed me greatly. And then I felt like there's almost no point talking about the rest of the game, because that did kill it. I do still think we would have lost, because we're no good there. We're absolute rubbish at St James's Park. We'd have, and the way we were playing, just it was some of that. We'll come on to it. Some of the suicide stuff we're trying to do at the back at the moment, especially away from home. I just don't understand. I mean, Martinez, give him his due, made an absolutely incredible save again to keep it at 1-0 going into half time. And then I guess there you hope to regroup, and that Emery will formulate some kind of plan with 10 men, and will come out and have a go in the second half as best you can with 10 men. That didn't really happen, but there was a flashpoint in the tunnel as well. Of course, Jason Tindall was involved. Why wouldn't Jason Tindall be involved in any kind of flashpoint? He was removed from proceedings, and we didn't see his face again on the screen, which pleased me greatly. But there was obviously a bit of a melee in the tunnel, Jacob.
Yes, there was, and I think it was up to 20-man melee apparently. And we tried to find out what's going on, and I've spoken to a few Villa contacts from the dressing room after the game, and they're claiming it was Newcastle. Newcastle were claiming it was Villa who instigated it. So they're complete opposite narratives, and I think there'll be more exploring in terms of who started and what happens. But as we all know, Tindall was deeply and heavily involved in it. Victor Manas, the first team analyst, got sent off as well. Tindall, I know him quite well from his time at Bournemouth, and he's a very interesting character. He was shushing Emery, wasn't he, in that first half? And Emery rarely gets rattled with other coaches. He just ignores them. Where Tindall managed to really wind him up, and he was shouting at Emery, was pointing at him, shouting at him, and I thought, you know what, fair play, Unai. And then I just think, Tindall seems to exist in this own world where he's like an assistant manager, like a manager, co-manager almost with Eddie Howe.
He's been a manager, and he didn't go great.
I was there covering it, and what's funny is that when he did become manager, he was so desperate to carve himself as completely separate to Eddie Howe that he ripped up Bournemouth's successful playbook and went deeply pragmatic and got sacked with one of the best championship teams in the league, and they were like 8th or 9th at the time. So he realised that Eddie Howe, he has to be with Eddie Howe in order to have a successful career, and he's gone back there. I find he tends to do it in every game, really. Newcastle have managed to ride up Villa the last 3 games, and they've been successful at it. And I think that kind of shows two things, really. Newcastle are really good at the ugly sides, given them credit for that. And Villa, I don't know if it's naivety, but I think they're too nice. And I'm going to do a piece on it next week. I think there's certain instances where I think Villa don't make the most of them, or they or they don't react to the situation well enough. And against a wind-up merchant like Tyndall, I think that those flaws got illuminated.
I would suggest as well that Unai Emery's forgotten more about football than Jason Tyndall's ever known, so he should show some respect to Don Unai. Second half, I mean, sub at half time, Watkins on for Tielemans. Slightly surprised to see. I can understand it because he obviously wanted to keep Onana and Kamara together. Slightly surprised Tielemans was withdrawn, bearing in mind one of the players that can pick a pass and see a pass that not many others see, especially when you're going to be playing with 10 men and Watkins is obviously going to be coming on and making runs. It felt like maybe leaving Tielemans, it's easy to say in hindsight, it just felt like Tielemans staying on would have been a wiser move from Villa.
I must admit, I put my hands up before the end of the first half. I said to Newcastle athletic right next to me, I did think Tielemans would be the guy that makes way for Watkins, because although Tielemans is already the guy that can set out the chances, Newcastle had obviously a player more, and I just felt Villa needed mobility at that point. You know, McGinn was operating in two positions in the second half, and I thought, okay, he will stay on, and you need Rodgers for the ball carrying. So I'd probably say if anyone's going to go off, maybe Onana goes off, and then you play Tielemans and Kamara. But then at the same time, you probably want the power and the athleticism of Onana. So I did have a problem with it, but it did mean that although Villa might have got overrun with Tielemans, they probably would have had a better chance of giving some sort of service to Watkins.
Yeah, it just never felt like there was ever going to be anyone who was going to pick that pass that we needed. I mean, there's only so much you can say watching it on TV. I'm sure Watkins would have ran his socks off and done all the things that Ollie Watkins does, but it was very difficult for him to get in the game. And look, it was very difficult for Villa to get in the game. I'm not sure what the plan was in that second half, and it is always difficult with 10 men, but we just never really offered anything in that game at all. It never looked like it was going to happen for us. And of course, Newcastle inevitably get the second goal. Inevitably, it's Isak because he's on fire at the moment. Lovely little pass from Bruno. It was a bit of patience, and then they've switched up the gears when they've needed to. Newcastle, and it was a Villa goal, the kind of goal Villa was scoring for probably a year ago under Unai Emery. I don't know whether I'm being a bit harsh on the defence here, but it just felt Isak was kind of on his own and no one wanted to get near him, which I didn't really understand. He was completely free in the penalty area to tap it home. No one, someone's got to be touch tight to Isak there.
Yeah, I've actually thought Ezri Konsa probably has two worst games in the last couple of years at St James's Park, because last year he was all over the place, and this year he looks uncharacteristically tentative and a little bit unsure, really. There's a few times where he didn't go with a runner, and the inbox defending or inbox marking's not been a Konsa and Powell forte between them. That's why, as Kevin says, I think Mings was quite surprised he didn't start yesterday. But I think the second goal was really well worked. Great quality from Newcastle. I'm more thinking of how many times this season have Villa kind of given the ball away in their own box. Like Murphy hits across path to Martinez, passes it to Joe Linton, and you just think this is becoming a bit of a growing trend now. And
yeah, it is.
I just found it quite bizarre, really, that Villa had 10 players against a high press with Newcastle away from home, with the momentum, and Villa kept trying to play out. And they literally, I know I don't want to sound like an old man here and a bit like a old folk, but they were causing their own problems by playing out from the back. And I just thought maybe you don't have to go straight out to Watkins, but why do you do a little bit more like you did last year, where Martinez might hit the fullbacks and just put the ball out wide and then get up the pitch, because they kept trying to play out from the back, and Onana and Kamara just getting pressed by Newcastle's brilliant hot presses in midfield. So yeah, it found bizarre, but that second goal I thought was quite good quality. It's more the third, which we'll come on to.
Yeah, the seconds killed the game. I did feel like we were going to come back from 1-0, but 2-0 definitely felt like it was too big a ask for Villa. Kevin James has obviously just said about Mings here. Mings got man of the match against Brentford, and we've not seen him since, if my memory serves me correctly. Are you surprised by that? That literally he played that game. He was obviously picked for that game for a reason.
Yeah.
And we haven't felt the need for him in any game since, because that, to me, St James's Park, you feel like you need that box defender, you need that leadership, especially maybe even an argument for bringing him on when you go down to 10 men. Am I wrong here? What's happened now? I'm really surprised. I don't know how many games it's been since. I'm probably wager 4 maybe. But you're surprised we haven't seen him since?
I think there's a few mitigating circumstances. So the game straight after Brentford was Southampton. He was, kind of feeling he was quite sore, wasn't he?
Fine.
That's fine. He was supposed to play the Nottingham Forest game, if you remember. He was, but he pulled out, so that might have been different. So but he recovered quite well, you know, and I did think he would play this time, maybe with Powell. And it would have been quite a nice narrative for him to come back to St James's.
Yeah, maybe psychological element of it. Maybe I don't
I
know.
don't know, but I just really think Villa wanted to get back to basics in that game against Brentford, and they did it very well in that first half. I just thought Villa are really struggling away from home, playing out from the back. So you might not need power in this game. Let's just go back to the basics and let's be really hard to beat. They've picked a midfield that, in theory, should have been hard to beat. I think Mings would have been a really good option as well. And maybe if that meant moving Constance to right back or whatever. But yeah, Mings is a really good leader, organizer, and there's some certain points where I thought Villa looks a little bit like rabbits in the headlights, and Mings might have been able to calm it down a little bit.
I mean, maybe a case of horses for courses as well in here. And again, it's very easy for me to sit here with hindsight, but maybe going back to the three at the back for this game, because it's going to be a really tough game. You know, I liked for Man City that we decided, even though we'd been winning with three at the back or doing well with three at the back, we kind of went back to our normal system, and that system worked. We had a game plan for that game against City, and it worked really well. I don't know whether I would have liked to have seen this go back to three at the back for this one. I just think sometimes, I don't know, I can't. It just, something doesn't feel right with us away from home. I don't feel safe, and I don't feel secure, and that's shown in the first minute, and then it's shown for the rest of the game as well, because we've just got a death wish. I love that we play out from the back, and we've scored some goals. I think look, the ends justify the means of us playing that way. But this season, or certainly in the last kind of few months, it has felt like we do have a death wish, and Anana's the one ultimately that gets punished with the third goal. But they could have had goals before that.
Yeah.
You know, we're our own worst enemy at times with it. It's like we have to. It's like we're wed to it, and we must do it at all costs. It felt a little bit like when I watched Southampton play. At times, we must keep doing it. We must keep doing it. We've got 10 men. You're a man down. You know, the same kind of patterns aren't going to emerge from the game playing that way when you've got 10 men. It felt like lacking a bit of like streetwiseness. Is that a word? Like I just didn't get why we kept trying it at all costs, because ultimately we conceded from it again, and I felt like that was always going to happen.
Yeah, and as I touched on earlier, McGinn was playing the right forward and a right winger in the second half. So of course the patterns that you'd expect weren't there.
And number 10 for Newcastle as well when he nearly grabbed that goal away.
Yeah, I was going to say, but it does feel like it must be a strict order, because Martinez is a really experienced player, and I think deep down he might have thought at points, you know what, guys, all good goalkeepers, let's just relieve the pressure, let's just go a little bit longer. They do that towards the end of halves, in the first half and the second halves. And what would be good with a back three as well is you have an extra player in defence, which means you have an extra player who can help with a build up from deep. So the pressing from Newcastle might not have been as great, and Villa would have had another option at the back. And also it could mean the full backs would turn into wing backs, and they could go higher, so you could clip the balls into them, and they might be stationed on the halfway line, and that would just help relieve the pressure. I thought it was quite naive, and I thought it was quite utopian, really, in terms of Villa just wanted to keep playing this way, and that's fine. But Emery is not a guy, or he's not typically been a guy that just follows one method. His best USP has been adapting on the fly and adapting brilliantly, and he did that fantastically last year and points this year. And I thought he would have adapted a bit better second half.
Yeah, we're just ultimately, I think, look, the 10 men has cost us, but I do genuinely think that we might struggle anyway, because it's just the factors that I mentioned at the start of the show. But that's 5 defeats away from home now in a row. That isn't good. I can't dress that up. You know, I said yesterday I'm struggling to come away with a single positive from that game, and I'm pretty positive about on the pitch Villa. I'm very negative about off the pitch Villa, but very positive about on the pitch Villa. But I would struggle to come up with a positive from yesterday at all. And the away form is a little bit alarming now.
Yeah, first time Villa have lost 5 successive away league games since 2017 under Steve Bruce. And yeah, it's a 16th defeat on Boxing Day as well, which equals Newcastle for the most defeats on Boxing Day, ironically.
In Premier League history? In
Premier League history, yes. As some guys on Twitter rightly pointed out, there's a few caveats. Obviously, Villa beat Leipzig with a really nice away performance, and they've had some tough games in that run, haven't they? Liverpool, Spurs, Chelsea.
Forest is hard as well, isn't
Forest as well. So really tough games, but we would expect a Villa of last season to get maybe a couple more points. And they wouldn't lose every game. They might not win them, but they might draw. They might get something out of them. The fact they've been beaten pretty comfortably, apart from the Forest game in most of them. I think it's quite worrying, and also the biggest issue is probably the same patterns keep emerging in terms of Villa not being able to handle pressure, points when the away crowd really gets up. There's always going to be times in a game away from home when you just have to ride out a storm. The other team are allowed to play well. And Villa I don't think ride out storms very well. They always tend to concede during a storm, and that makes it obviously more difficult to come back from away from home. So yeah, it's not been great, but I think Villa still sit in a pretty decent position considering that they've the perception is they've largely been quite average this season.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's still the case now, but 10 points worse off than they were at this point last season. I do think you can't read too much into that because it has just been a bizarre Premier League season all round. Anyway, the points totals at the end of the season won't be the same as what they were last season. So I won't read too much into it. I think top four is going to be a tall order for us, especially if we get through to the knockouts of the Champions League. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the ambition is going to have to be a good run in the Champions League, hopefully the FA Cup as well, although I'm not sure how seriously we'll take it, and just shoot for top five and hope that that's enough in the coefficients for Champions League football again, because top four is going to be a huge ask. But I think it's important not to read too much into the points total at this stage last season, because we were on a phenomenal run at this point last year. It may be that Villa go on and have a sensational second half of the season and it works the opposite way to last season. But the total to get into the top four, top five will be different this year, and it's just a completely different season to what it was last year. And at least we're not Man U and Tottenham.
Completely agree, and like you say, it could be role reversal. And if you're glass half full, you'd hope that Villa come on strong towards the second half of the season, as opposed to falling away. But I think it'd be such a tall order to get in the top five. I think arguably it's better last year of getting in fourth place. Given how Villa started, and it does seem that they've got a few more issues within the squad this year than they did last year. I always thought from the start of the season, from the outset, that Europa League would be great for Villa. It's not Champions League, but completing the set under Unai Emery and having all these experiences in 3 different European competitions would be a brilliant achievement. So I think aiming for that, and like you say, they look like they're going to get into the knockouts of the Champions League. That'd be fantastic. And let's hope they take the FA Cup seriously and they don't make me pretty angry afterwards that they didn't bring anyone on during what it should be the anniversary game, and it should be a lovely, brilliant celebration that I'm sure every single Villa legend got consulted about entirely. And they should
tell you that's not true.
And they should take it seriously. But it will be quite funny because I don't think West Ham would be very bothered about it either. But anyway.
No, I mean, I'm personally really looking forward to celebrating my club's 150th anniversary with all the West Ham fans. I think that's a brilliant move. At least they wear claret and blue, I suppose.
What's their capacity or allocation they're allowed?
7,000, isn't it? 6,000 or 7,000, I think. There could be more West Ham fans than Villa fans, to be honest, with the ticket prices this season. People having to pick and choose what they do.
I would have thought they would have picked a better game to celebrate the fantastic club's history, but.
I would have thought they'd have picked the actual 150th year rather than the year after. But who am I to judge?
But yeah, I think if Villa can just get back on an even level and they can win some of these games against top 10 teams, and they can do what they did very well against Brentford and to a lesser extent Southampton in terms of beating the teams they should do. Given how everyone else is falling away and really inconsistent, then if they just manage to hold themselves together, then I think top 7 would be very realistic.
Yeah, there's even watched a bit of the Forest game earlier. Forest have got incredible momentum, and everything feels on the same page, and things are going well for them. They've got a system; it's working. Forest feel like they might be the Villa of last year.
I think Forest will get figure out.
They haven't got Europe. I think fine. I'm not sure they will. I think they've got a good chance.
I look at Forest and. Obviously, I like a lot of their players, but a lot of their stuff they do is pretty. I think you can work it out a little bit. I don't think they're as detailed tactic as Villa were last year, and I thought Villa should have, if they played with a bit more intently at their place. I thought Villa could have won that. I don't think Forest were very good until the final 10 minutes. But yeah, they're obviously in a great form. But I'm sure tactical analysts up and down the country for Premier League clubs are trying to work out the weak spots of Forest, and I do think they'll probably be figured out by January. That's my prediction.
Strength and depth might be a problem for them, but if they have money to spend in January. I'm not sure whether they do. Maybe they could get a couple more players in. I do actually want to do a transfer show with you at some stage. I don't want to delve too much into transfers now, but I know that you had a piece out on the Athletic around Villa's transfers. I read it yesterday. Do you expect Villa to get someone in just briefly?
Yeah, I think they'll do one or two, and yeah, there'll be some going out on loan, I think.
Okay, keep your powder dry because we'll come on to that at a later date and do a show after you dry. As you've only just got back from Newcastle, I suppose I should let you go and let you enjoy the Christmas period because you did miss out yesterday having a miserable day at St James's Park. But Jacob, anything coming up that you're excited about on the Athletic that people should watch out for?
Luckily, at this moment in time, actually, not really anyone's working. Obviously, pieces are going out, but everyone tends to be off. But I would say keep an eye out for a few, quite big pieces at the start of January. There's a few good things going on. I'm looking into Real Union, for example. Got a good relationship with some of those guys out there, working out what the relationship with Villa and Real Union and Igor Emery, which is fantastic, and obviously wanting to do a bit more background on some really nice stories that Villa fans have come to me about. So that's great.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I look forward to those. I always enjoy reading your Villa pieces on the Athletic, and still enjoy the Athletic in general. It's really, really, I love it. I read it every single day. I can't get enough of it. So yeah, do have a look out for Jacob's pieces on the Athletic if you are subscribed. And if you're not subscribed, go and subscribe. And talking of subscribers, if you're not subscribed to this channel with your post notifications on, if you could do that, please, on YouTube, that would be absolutely fantastic. And wherever you get your podcast audio wise, leave us a nice review and give us 5 stars. Please leave a nice comment as well. That would really, really help us. We will be back with a show ahead of the Brighton game. I'm not sure who it will be with and when it is, but it will be coming at some point. So watch out for that. What time is it now? 2:30 on the 27th. No idea what day it is. Is it Friday today? Enjoy your weekend. I guess I should say, with Villa not playing till Monday. Try not to stew on the Newcastle result too much. I'm going to try. Now I've done this and I've got it off my chest, I'm going to try and forget about it and move on with my life and move on with my day. But I hope you have an excellent rest of your Friday and a brilliant weekend as well. And we'll be back with a preview in the next couple of days, so watch out for that. Only one thing left to say.